Germany is one of the richest countries in the world, yet most Germans are terrible at investing. That sentence sounds harsh, but the numbers behind it are even harsher. For decades, the average German has trusted savings accounts more than the stock market. Millions of euros sit quietly in something called a Tagesgeldkonto, earning almost nothing. The interest on these accounts barely keeps up with inflation in a normal year. In a bad year, inflation quietly eats the entire value of that safe money. Germans call this safety, but mathematically it is a slow and silent loss. The fear of losing money in stocks is so strong that many never even try. This fear comes from history, not from logic, and that distinction matters enormously. Older generations remember hyperinflation, war, and currency collapses that destroyed savings overnight. That trauma got passed down, quietly shaping how millions of Germans handle money today. The result is a culture that values security over growth, even when growth is safer long-term. Here is the uncomfortable truth modern data keeps proving again and again. Cash sitting in a low-interest account is not actually safe, it is just slowly shrinking. A savings account paying 1% while inflation runs at 3% is a guaranteed loss. Most Germans never calculate this loss because it never shows up as a scary red number. It simply shows up later as a retirement that feels smaller than it should. This is the first major mistake almost every ordinary German investor makes without realizing it. Mistake number one is confusing feels safe with is actually safe mathematically. The second mistake is even more common and arguably more expensive over a lifetime. Many Germans still buy life insurance products that are marketed as investment vehicles. These products are called Kapitalbindungsversicherung, and they have quietly devoured wealth for decades. They combine insurance and investing into one expensive package that does neither job particularly well. The fees hidden inside these policies are often invisible to the person actually paying them. A large portion of every monthly payment goes toward commissions, not toward actual investment growth. Many of these contracts lock your money away for 15, 20, even 30 years. If you need the money early, the penalties can be brutal and shockingly expensive. Financial advisors selling these products often earn a large upfront commission the moment you sign. That commission structure quietly explains why these products get pushed so aggressively across Germany. The third mistake is just as damaging, even though it looks completely different on the surface. Many Germans who do invest try to pick individual stocks instead of buying the whole market. They watch financial news, follow hot tips, and chase whichever company is trending that month. This feels exciting, but the data on individual stock picking is brutally consistent. Most retail investors who pick individual stocks underperform the broader market over long periods. Even many professional fund managers, with full-time teams, fail to beat a simple index year after year. If professionals struggle to beat the market consistently, the odds for a part-time investor are worse. The fourth mistake is trying to time the market instead of staying invested continuously. Many Germans wait for the right moment to invest, watching prices instead of buying steadily. They wait for a crash, then panic when the crash actually happens, and wait even longer. By the time they feel confident again, prices have often already recovered significantly. Studies consistently show that missing just a handful of the market's best days devastates long-term returns. Nobody can reliably predict those exact days in advance, not even professional traders. The fifth mistake is treating real estate as the only real investment worth taking seriously. Many Germans pour every available euro into property, while leaving stock investing almost completely ignored. Property can absolutely build wealth, but concentrating everything into one illiquid asset carries serious risk. A paid-off apartment generates no income unless it is rented out or eventually sold. Meanwhile, a diversified stock portfolio can generate dividends and growth without ever needing to be sold. The sixth mistake is starting too late, often waiting until your 40s to begin investing seriously. Time in the market matters more than almost any other single factor in building wealth. A 25-year-old investing modestly has a massive mathematical advantage over a 45-year-old investing aggressively. This is simply how compound interest works, and the math does not care about good intentions. Let's actually run the numbers, because seeing this calculated clearly changes how people think. Imagine investing 200 euros every month into a broad ETF starting at age 25. At a long-term average return of 7% after inflation, the math becomes extraordinary. By age 65, that simple €200 habit can grow into well over €500,000. Now imagine starting the exact same habit 10 years later, at age 35 instead. The final amount at retirement drops dramatically, even though the monthly contribution stayed identical. That single 10-year delay can cost hundreds of thousands of euros in lost growth. This is not a guess or an opinion. It is simply how exponential growth behaves over time. The earlier money enters the market, the more time it has to multiply itself. Waiting feels harmless in the moment, but mathematically, waiting is often the most expensive decision possible. Now let's talk about fees, because German investors are often quietly overcharged for years. Actively managed mutual funds in Germany frequently charge annual fees between 1 and 2%. That might sound small, but compounded over 30 years, those fees devour an enormous share of returns. A simple ETF tracking a broad index can charge a fraction of that, sometimes under 0.2%. Over several decades, that fee difference alone can mean a difference of well over 100,000 euros. Most Germans paying these higher fees have no idea how much wealth they are quietly losing. The financial industry rarely highlights this, because higher fees mean higher profits for the institution selling them. This brings us to a crucial mathematical concept most schools never teach at all. Compound interest is often called the eighth wonder of the world, and for good reason. It is not about earning a huge return once, it is about earning a steady return repeatedly. Each year's growth adds to the previous year's growth, creating an accelerating snowball effect over time. In the early years, this growth looks slow, almost disappointingly small to an impatient investor. In the later years, the exact same percentage produces dramatically larger absolute numbers. This is why most of the real wealth built through investing appears very late in the timeline. Many people quit investing right before the snowball effect actually starts becoming visible and dramatic. Patience, more than intelligence, is often the deciding factor separating successful investors from frustrated ones. Now, let's address diversification, because this is where many German investors quietly expose themselves to risk. Some investors put almost their entire portfolio into a handful of well-known German companies. This feels comfortable because the names are familiar, but familiarity is not the same as safety. A single country or a single industry can underperform for an entire decade or longer. A globally diversified ETF spreads risk across thousands of companies and dozens of countries simultaneously. This dramatically reduces the damage any single company or country collapse could cause to your portfolio. Diversification will never make you rich overnight, but it dramatically increases your odds of long-term success. Let's also talk about a uniquely German obstacle that quietly discourages investing altogether: complexity. Opening a brokerage account in Germany can feel intimidating, filled with confusing tax forms and terminology. Many people simply give up before they even make their first investment, overwhelmed by the paperwork. Once the account is open, the actual process of investing in an ETF is remarkably simple. A single monthly Sparplan can automate the entire process, removing both complexity and emotional decision-making. This automation matters enormously, because emotional decisions are usually where investors lose the most money. Fear during a crash and greed during a bubble are the two most expensive emotions in investing. An automated monthly contribution simply ignores both emotions completely, buying steadily regardless of market mood. This single habit alone outperforms most attempts at clever, emotionally driven market timing over the long run. Now let's discuss taxes, because Germany's tax system on investments often gets misunderstood entirely. Capital gains in Germany are generally taxed at a flat rate, regardless of how long you held the investment. Many investors mistakenly believe holding longer reduces their tax rate the way it works in some other countries. This misunderstanding sometimes leads to poor decisions, like selling too early or holding too long unnecessarily. There is also a yearly tax-free allowance on investment gains that many people forget even exists. Failing to use this allowance efficiently quietly costs many German investors unnecessary tax payments every single year. Understanding these basic rules, rather than guessing, can meaningfully improve your actual long-term returns. Let's bring this back to the core mathematical comparison that defines almost everything in this video. Picture two Germans, both earning the same salary, both saving the same €200 monthly. The first keeps that money in a savings account, earning roughly 1% annually. The second invests that same amount into a globally diversified ETF averaging 7% annually. After 30 years, the saver's pile grows modestly, weighed down constantly by inflation eating its value. After 30 years, the investor's pile has multiplied dramatically, even accounting for market ups and downs. The difference between these two outcomes is not luck, talent, or starting income. It is simply math. This is the core lesson hiding underneath every mistake we just walked through together. Wrong investing in Germany rarely looks like reckless gambling or obvious financial disaster. It usually looks quiet, responsible, and even disciplined, while still mathematically losing to inflation every single year. It looks like a safe savings account slowly shrinking in real value without anyone noticing. It looks like an expensive insurance investment hybrid product quietly underperforming a simple ETF for decades. It looks like picking exciting individual stocks while ignoring the boring, broadly diversified index fund. It looks like waiting for the right time to invest, while the market quietly moves on without you. None of these mistakes feel dramatic in the moment, and that is exactly why they are so dangerous. They simply cost you money slowly, invisibly, year after year, without ever feeling like a crisis. By the time the damage becomes visible, decades of potential compounding have already been quietly lost. The good news is that fixing these mistakes does not require complicated financial knowledge at all. It requires understanding a handful of simple mathematical truths and then consistently acting on them. Start early, even with a small amount, because time is the single most powerful variable in the equation. Choose broad diversification over exciting individual bets because spreading risk dramatically improves long-term odds. Minimize fees wherever possible because every percentage point quietly compounds against you over decades. Automate your contributions because consistency beats emotion almost every single time in long-term investing. Stay invested through market downturns because panic selling locks in losses that recoveries could have erased. Understand the basic tax rules because small inefficiencies quietly accumulate into meaningful losses over a lifetime. None of this requires predicting the market, picking winning stocks, or having any special insider knowledge. It simply requires understanding the real math and then giving that math enough time to work. The Germans who build real wealth through investing are rarely the most aggressive or the most clever. They are usually the most consistent, the most patient, and the most willing to ignore short-term noise. They treat investing as a quiet, boring, decades-long habit, not as an exciting once-in-a-while event. And in the end, that quiet boredom is precisely what produces the most dramatic long-term results. The real secret to building wealth in Germany was never about finding a clever trick or hidden strategy. It was always about understanding the simple math of time, consistency, and cost, and then respecting it.